Hello and welcome back to the Game Room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love talking about? Games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me, and that's not the 2,144 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. And for today's video, I had an inkling. There's a lot of games I've played in recent years that I just thought were meh, or could have been better, or just were outright disasters. And because I think I know everything, I wanted to do a video where I think I can fix it. Now, I'm gonna put some parameters here. I'm not gonna completely just say redo everything. I mean, as much as I'd like to. I'm gonna try my best to work within the parameters of the games for the most part, as well as this video is gonna be full of spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled, then maybe, I don't know, tread cautiously. All these games will have come out in the last 5 or 6 years. But if that sounds interesting to you, let's check it out.
There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
So some of these games I thought about more deeply than others, as well as some of these are actually games that most people did like. I just found it not to be as great as I would have liked it to be. So let's see how this goes. Once again, I don't script anything, so I'm just going to go off the cusp and see what we're looking at. So hey, what more appropriate game to start with than Final Fantasy VII Remake? So I know a lot of people love this game. Final Fantasy VII Afterbirth just came out, or Rebirth just came out, which I have not picked up, and largely I have not picked up because of the sentiment I was left with after Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, it's not a big spoiler anymore. Final Fantasy VII Remake is more or less a retelling of Final Fantasy VII, where certain characters in that world are aware that Final Fantasy VII occurred. And it's one of the biggest kind of stretches for a developer I've ever seen in my life, where they clearly don't want to make a remake of the original game. They want to, like Square has done with Final Fantasy VII for years after Final Fantasy VII. They want to expound on it, they want to wreck on it, they want to change it. And so Final Fantasy VII Remake, already I was upset that there was not going to be turn-based combat. Now, I'm not going to say, like I say, I'm not going to say did put in turn-based combat. My biggest gripe with it was the amount of bloat and the fact that the game is so overly padded in order to get to that justification to make the whole first game just Midgar, that it loses some of the essence of what I was excited about. And maybe now I would enjoy playing Rebirth, because that's finally getting into the meat and potatoes of the large majority of Final Fantasy VII story. At least all the characters are there. And I didn't play Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, whatever the DLC was. But how would I fix it? This one's an easy one. I would just remove the whole... I would remake the damn game. Remake Final Fantasy VII. Get rid of this subplot of needing to shoehorn Sephiroth in earlier. Get rid of the whispers. Get rid of the whole alternate timeline. And just simply remake the damn game. I get it. I get that you guys are feel handcuffed having to go, but that would have been so... That's what we've been asking for this whole time, even without the turn-based combat. Because the combat system, yes, I did enjoy it, but that one, just remake Final Fantasy VII. Don't have all the alternate BS. Don't have the stupid ghosts. Don't have the damn train yard section. Don't have the freaking needing to do these puzzles that take forever. Like, there's so much padding in the game that just, in my opinion, I know some people ate it up. I did not. Okay, the next one I want to talk about was a sequel. Now, a lot of these games you'll see will be sequels to really good first-party titles for Sony. And this was one of the first ones, I think one of the first sequels to come out. Ironically, it came out next to Elden Ring. The original came out next to Breath of the Wild, so it always got overshadowed when it came out. But that's Horizon Forbidden West. This game has no idea what it wanted to do. Now, I never played the Northern Wilds DLC after the first Horizon game, but the first Horizon game ends with you realizing this is Earth. This is a place that got destroyed by its own technology when the technology realized it could assimilate biomaterial into its into its essence, its living, essentially. So it started eating people, and that's how it kept going until there was only tribes left, and everyone got knocked back into the Stone Age, because obviously technology was killing them. So you come in as Aloy, this mystery girl that comes out of one of these hatches, can connect with these different machineries in ways no one else can, and eventually you find out she's a descendant of, I can't remember her name, but one of the people who created these machines to begin with, and that's the end of the first game. You have Lance Reddick's characters out there dealing with Cerberus and all these other things, and it was a really nice, interesting story, a great new IP. And in Forbidden West, when it starts, it's a little all over the place. So first the game starts you off, and you don't really know what the plot is. You have this big bad character who then turns out to not really be that important. You finally get to the central hub location where then you're tasked with going and repairing the Gaia network. And then through that, you find out that there's space people, and there's a clone of Aloy, and then there's also people from the East that use technology and revere it. There's too many ideas in this game. It is way overdone. There's jump the shark moments, and the final boss is a freaking fight with space people. The original, it's all over the place. I would remove the space people. Maybe you can have them show up at the end of the game if you want to tease a third game, but I would remove that whole plot line. I would remove the people from the East who are using technology. I would focus more on the big bad that's set up at the beginning, and then I would get straight to the part where you find the central hub in Colorado and have the repairing of the Gaia network, because the Gaia network repairs stuff is more enjoyable in my opinion. Maybe have Cerberus be working with the big bad and Lance Reddick's characters, something of that nature, just to pair that all together and just streamline it, because it's all over the place. And one of the problems I have with some of these games that do take place in open worlds that are huge and expansive, but they're supposed to represent going across the entirety of the United States, is I don't buy it. I don't buy that I'm able to get from Colorado to the shores of San Francisco in 20 minutes of just walking or flying. It breaks the immersion. I found the first game so much more effective, where it didn't really... It did attach things to certain locations, but it didn't really feel like... It felt like I was... I mean, maybe because I don't know the East Coast as well, too. That was part of the problem. But yes, that's how I would fix that. Combat-wise is still fine. It's good from the first game. They somehow made it worse. They made the upgrades worse. So whatever, and that's one of the issues with these games, is if you upgrade yourself throughout the first game, then when you get to the sequel, you either have to depower yourself, or you have to have all of those same abilities, but then add little, new things. So you have these artificial barriers like red crystals that need to be broken a certain way, or things of that nature. But yeah, just everything about Forbidden West was not nearly as good as Horizon Zero Dawn, unfortunately. And that one, I think if they at least repaired some of the story problems, the combat not being as great wouldn't be so prevalent. And speaking of a game where the combat wasn't great and the story wasn't great, this is one that was funny. When it came out, people loved it, but as we've gotten further away from it, it seems like the cracks are starting to show, which happened on the original one too, but the original one was at least a solid game. But Spider-Man 2, man, I did not enjoy this game whatsoever. It was all fluff, no substance. The fact that they refer to both Spider-Man as Spider-Man is kind of annoying, because it'll show you which one is talking by the little emoji head. And the storyline, it's always tough when you have the symbiote in there, because they always try and cram it all into either one movie or one game, when really it needs time to breathe. It kind of boils down to Peter Parker just being overconfident, and then people starting to act like, why are you being like this, bro? Even though it's like, man, you went from 0 to 60 on him super quick too. And just, it's villains after villains. You have villains getting killed off screen. You have the sections. You're forced to switch between Miles and Peter. Peter, for some stupid reason, won't let Miles in. Won't give him any truth. The number one complaint I always have in these games is like, hey, what's going on? Oh, I can't tell you right now. I'll call you later. When you could basically tell them what's going on in probably 2 sentences. It's just extended arbitrarily because the game requires it. And then Norman Osborn being the symbiote carrier instead of Eddie Brock. And then suddenly Norman is incredible using the symbiote suit overnight. And so Peter's working with Harry Osborn, his friend. So Harry's freaking incredible with it. And so he's going and working with Harry instead of Miles. But then why is Miles there? It just feels overbloated. and unnecessary. And the way I would fix it is I would make it so you can keep your dual Spider-Man thing if you want, but I would highly just make it so that you can play the entire game as just one of them. I would also make it so that the symbiote suit is not the... I mean, you have Kraven the Hunter, you have Venom in there, you have all this... It's just, it's a mess. It's a mess. Scale it back, maybe build the symbiote suit a little bit better, have the ultimate villain, like, because you have Venom going back, you have a fight with Peter, like, there's so many false endings in the game, and it's also, they use things from the storyline as far as the bell tower and things of that nature, but then it doesn't really ever seem to pay dividend. I don't know. This one I don't know how to really fix as well, but mainly it would be like, I honestly, I would remove the whole Miles storyline. I would have it be just on Peter again. You can swap to Mary Jane or you can swap to Miles limited, and then maybe once Peter goes fully off the deep end, then go to Miles and have Miles defeat Peter and end it there, or don't have the symbiote suit thing be addressed at the end of the game. Once again, set it up for another third game or something of that nature. I don't know, I just, God, and then the combat in this game was way overdone. You have too many enemies that are firing at you from the distance. You have too many enemies that the combat just isn't fun. And also they tie the health to the takedown. So you mean to tell me that I can't do one of the most fun things, which is auto taking down an enemy because I need to have a heal in my back pocket? That was not the case in the first game. So that right there, that single gameplay mechanic was so infuriating. And at least for myself, who wasn't doing all the stupid side quests, I did not get a second charge to that whatever that bar is that allows you to have multiple takedowns until almost hour 25, basically once the symbiote suit went nuts. So yeah, that's what I would do on that. At least that small change would make it so much more enjoyable. Alright, I guess we're going through the Sony trifecta of bad sequels, in my opinion. So the last one we're going to talk about is God of War Ragnarok. Loved God of War 2018. One of my favorite games of all time. Completely reinvented the series in such a great way, in such a visceral combat, and a phenomenal story between a father and son going through the world. It felt very intimate as these larger world kind of entities were coming down on them. And then God of War Ragnarok completely removes that intimacy and turns it into Game of Thrones Season 8, where everything has to be done now. So this easily could have been made. Like, it's funny, a lot of these games could have been set up as trilogies. As much as I don't want to make a third game if it's unnecessary, but this one more than any of them. And the biggest culprit they have is that they're trying to make this dynamic where Odin is evil, but when you meet Odin, he seems decent. And I get it. They're trying to show you that, yeah, you know, the kindness, or evil's face, evil wears a kind face, or they might make sense, or there's areas of gray. But it doesn't work, in my opinion. And one of the biggest problems they have is they spend the entire game setting up that Atreus, Loki, can help him find this mask that allow Odin to see, who's the All-Seer, into this realm of complete knowledge. And you spend the whole game getting the mask. You finally get the mask. You're about to have Odin put it on, and then Loki destroys it, which breaks one of the cardinal rules of storytelling. It's called Chekhov's gun. You do not set up something or have a MacGuffin for the entire movie just to have it mean nothing. It'd be like in Indiana Jones if at the end, instead of opening the Ark of the Covenant, everyone just dies. or they blow up the Ark of the Covenant and then it's done. Like, that's... Yeah, it subverts your expectations, and it seems to be very on brand for modern storytelling, but it isn't necessarily memorable, and it doesn't pay off. It's not something you're going to want to... You're going to be like, oh, wow, you're not going to want to see it again. So that was a horrible choice, in my opinion. The way I would fix God of War Ragnarok, the combat's still phenomenal. It feels easier in the first one. Everything about the combat's fine. The God of War, like, the stuff is fine with that. I would remove, as much fun as it is playing as Atreus, I would actually not have that, because especially the part where Atreus goes to Jotunheim and has his little jaunt with the Jotunheim girl takes forever. It breaks the pace, it breaks the everything. Like, now suddenly you go from, especially if you're playing on the hardest mode like I was, you go from a skill set you're used to that's very powerful and repeatable to this new one you got to learn on the fly, and is not nearly as much fun and not nearly as good. as well as it breaks the pace. So I'd rather see nothing of Atreus on this. I would just see it from Kratos' perspective, where his son is disappearing and then coming back, so that you don't really know what's going on with him and Odin, if he's really been manipulated, if it really is. So it's that mystery that keeps you going. Then at the end of the game, I would have the mask get used. So either the mask get used after you defeat Odin and have it be like the Ark of the Covenant where it destroys Odin, or have him get the mask and have him be all powerful and then have to destroy him as that, or more likely, because Loki is the trickster god, have him put on a fake mask or have him put on something, or have him know that the mask was due to show everything, but also in showing everything it removes something of that nature, where it destroys Odin and is used, instead of it having Loki just destroy it, because it's such a cop-out doing that. And then if you still want to have the Atreus stuff, do that post-game. So then give the option as an unlockable, where now you can play through Atreus in those sections and then give more of a background and show how, oh, look at that, and then it gives more credence to that. Maybe it shows Atreus set up the destruction, or know that about, or something of that. I feel like this one would have made for a better game, in my opinion, instead of what we got. Especially when Odin turns, when you find out he's been as like Typhon or Til, whatever the god of war in Norse mythology, where Odin reveals him as that, and then the little dwarf guy just suddenly, because the other dude makes calls him his name or does something, like he calls him out of nowhere. Like, it just makes no sense. It's pure, this has to happen because of the plot. So I would also fix that beat too. I would have that do something else rather. And the way I fix that is just have Atreus straight up leave with the mask, because he knows this is what was supposed to happen. So that's how I would do that. But yeah, God of War Ragnarok, that one really pissed me off. Okay. Now here's one that I recently played, and it was very divisive when it came out. A lot of people were disappointed because it was supposed to be the heir apparent to Dead Space, and then a Dead Space remake came out a couple months later and crushed it. And that's Callisto Protocol. This game really did itself a disservice by marketing itself too much as a Dead Space clone if it wasn't going to go full Dead Space. My biggest issues with the story and everything is the fact that they try to make this morally ambiguous thing about, oh, you were tracking these goods, that you deserve to be in the prison, and then they have this kind of like this terrorist woman played by the chick from The Boys, who blows up your ship, kills your best friend, and then you have this begrudging friendship throughout the game where she's constantly throwing you down out of the bus, screwing you over, killing your friend, stealing his thing, leaving you to die, but you keep wanting to work with her, which makes no damn sense to me. I'd fix this by having you just be a straight prisoner in the thing, just from the beginning. So not have the extra start about the ship, and then maybe as the game reveals, you can still have that reveal that the virus was spread by you, and that's why you're in the prison, if you want to do that. Otherwise, it's not really that necessary. I don't really care about this conflict between the two people trying to escape. There's horrible monsters around. Let's deal with that, and there's this mystery of this other thing. Let's deal with that. The whole thing with the crash just has you set up by killing what appears to be a family man in your partner, and then it just doesn't resonate. It doesn't resonate that you're a smuggler. Big deal. Like, you do smuggling jobs. Yeah, it's your fault, I guess. Did you even know what you're doing? I don't know. It seems like you didn't. So that's how I would fix the story for that, to make it less annoying, in my opinion. Then it makes sense why, if you're a prisoner, why the girl wouldn't trust you and leave you to die, instead of her blowing up your ship, getting you in jail, and then leaving you to die constantly. Because without that reveal, it still doesn't have that much impact, in my opinion. And then also the melee-focused combat, I think, was the wrong way to go. Not having it be shooting off the limbs was the wrong way to go. It just wasn't... If you're going to go Dead Space, you got to go full Dead Space. So I would do more Dead Space in that regard. But at least if the story had been fixed, I thought that would have been a better way of doing it. Okay, this one is funny because people say they love this game. I played it. I thought it was alright, but really I think the controversy is what buoyed it more than anything. And that's Hogwarts Legacy. Now, my problem with this game has to do with a lot of gaming bloat. This seems like it was developed to be a mobile game because there's timers on your dang collection of reagents. There's timers on your brewing of potions. There's timers. There's time gating. You're forced to go through and find pages. You're forced to do these mini games to unlock new sections. You have a main quest. I think this game would have been very much helped by having a main quest line the way they do in Bethesda games, so like Skyrim, where you can do the whole main quest in 2 hours, or you can enjoy doing the side content. But when they force you to be like, okay, here's the next thing we have to do. Oh my God, it's the end of the world. Okay, I'll let you know when we can get to it. It doesn't build any tension. It doesn't build any urgency into it. They did do a nice thing with the whole world building. It looks really nice, but just everything is tedious. Having to change your outfits, you have way too many things to put on. The different spells, having 4 different spells channels. There's multiple things for each spell, but they don't really seem all that different. But hey, with the deadly arts, I can't imagine playing this game without doing the deadly arts, because Avada Kedavra, Crucio, that makes the game so much more manageable and fun, in my opinion, because there's really not much diversity of enemies. There's not much anything. It's just a big love letter if you love being in the Hogwarts world. But as someone who's not the hugest Harry Potter fan and likes good gameplay, it is not good gameplay. So I would just remove the fact that you have, like, as far as everything else goes in the game, it's still solid. I actually found the beginning of the game much more engaging than a lot of people did. But I would remove some of those time gatings. I would allow you to go into the different areas at will, not always having to be, go and get 2 different class studies done before you can progress. I would allow you to progress to the end of the game and beat it sooner, rather than having to see all this other bloat if you don't want to. And then I would remove the amount of armors you could equip. So yeah, I get the whole dress up part, but maybe just have a coat and so I think you have a coat, you have bracers, you have hands, you have a hat, you have glasses. Like, there's so many different augments you can put on yourself. Even as simple as, hey, just no matter what armor I get, keep the same default, because you can go in there and put a transmogrification on it to make you look a certain way. But every time you find a new item, you then have to do that again. And you find new items probably every 5 minutes. And then I would remove all the timers, all that BS. And that's how I would do that. But yeah, I would add some new enemies or something, because it does get very... I don't know why people love this game so much. I did not. Okay, now this is kind of the big onus on why I even made this video, was for this game, and that is The Last of Us 2. Now, outside of why on earth was this the story they tried to tell, I, for the life of me, don't know who the hell thought this was a good way of going. Killing one of the most beloved characters of last generation in the first 10 minutes is a bold statement. It's definitely an interesting thing to do. But then the story told after that, I didn't really feel was all that great. I mean, it's horrible people doing horrible things. But let's assume that's still the story you're telling, because I'm not trying to, like I said, I'm trying to work within the parameters. I feel one of the funniest things about Last of Us Part 2 is that after playing it, I enjoyed the Abby characters more than the Ellie characters. And Abby's whole storyline made more sense. So what I would do is I would flip it. I would actually start the game as, and I would have marketed it this way too. I would have just made it, hey, we're going to follow the girl whose dad was murdered by Joel and Ellie. You don't talk about Joel, you don't talk about Ellie. Focus everything on Abby. Now, she does look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and as much as, yes, I understand that can be a real body type, this is after a post-apocalyptic world where you clearly, it's just very, I mean, this isn't Gears of War. This is Last of Us. Last of Us is supposed to be grounded, and there are some shots, especially when she's walking around in a tank top, where it's laughable. So I would tone down on the muscle mass, maybe about 20%. It's fine, she can be yoked, that's okay, but man, it's a little obnoxious at times. But I would start off with just her portion of the story, because if you don't know, the way it is that you have Ellie. Basically, Joel gets killed in the beginning. Ellie wants to go get revenge. She goes in Seattle and slowly kills all of Abby's friends until you get to the point where they confront each other, and then it goes back in time. And you follow Abby's perspective during those 4 days, or 3 days where Ellie was doing that. And you get to know her cast of characters and everything, and then she gets into her own shenanigans. So I would reverse it. I would completely reverse it. I would have it be all of Abby's stuff until you get to the point where she shoots the Jim or whatever the boyfriend in the head, and then you see it's Ellie, and then you're like, oh my god, what? Ellie's in this? It would have been a cool reveal on par with God of War with the Blades of Chaos. Because then it's like, oh, okay, so now... And then from there you can tell the backstory and you can show the beginning. And also somehow, there's so many coincidences where they end up with Joel and get him in there during a story infected. He's acting unlike himself. Like, all the amounts of justification. Sure, we can keep that the same. But they'll at least... And then you can follow Ellie going in there, and then you can see her systematically killing these people that we liked and seeing it from her perspective until you get to it. And then this part is where you should have the ability to have either of them kill each other. So maybe even allow you to select who you want to play as in that first confrontation. Because having Abby let Ellie go twice, I mean, the first time didn't make sense. Second time definitely doesn't make sense. And then you have Ellie go back, and the whole Dina-Ellie storyline just doesn't play all that well for myself. It seems so contrived. There's not much chemistry between them. There's not the same relationship built that you get between Ellie and Joel in the first game. But at least by flipping the story, it does make it a little bit more impactful. It does make it a little bit less jarring to start the game immediately with killing off the favorite character from the first game if you weren't aware they weren't supposed to be there. And then you've given them, the audience, the time to like this character who now you've seen all their friends die, that then you go back in time and see that, oh, I was liking someone who just killed Joel. Oh my god, let's get her. In my opinion, at least, that would have made sense in this weird story they decided to tell. But still, I mean, if I'm not changing the story, that's at least that, in my opinion, would have made it a stronger game. All right, getting down here. So another one that I recently just played was Forspoken. I'm not going to spend that much time on this. I still think having the main character be someone from the world initially who was not transported to New York and abandoned, and then having the villain be the Cuff who was corrupting all these major mage women's. I would just go whole hog. You want to have a matriarchy world? Have them be evil. Don't have them being influenced by some demon character. At the end, instead of it having been she had all their powers after all. No, just have her be some mythical person who is foretold or whatever. Take down all the evil people and then restore balance. Make it a much simpler game. Have no freaking thing. You can still have the Cuff, I guess, if you want, but I would just remove that Cuff interaction altogether. He's annoying. Like, their banter is just not the greatest, and I would just make it a simple action game in that regard. I mean, it's still not great, but at least it wouldn't be as eye-rolling and just depowering you at the end of the game. It's so stupid, but that's what I'd do on that. All right, this one's going to be a controversial one, but I'm not going to spend too much time on that, so it's Red Dead 2. So I did not enjoy this game that much. There's not many stakes. You know immediately Arthur Morgan is going to not survive the events of this tale. And having you be bogged down with a group of people for the entirety of the game, whereas the first game you were kind of a lone gunman going through the countryside, I didn't find that community aspect all that enjoyable. It's more fun getting to a new town, using all the areas. You end up killing the person who's your contact, or they get killed, and then you move on to the next one. That's a much more enjoyable feat for me than having this roving band of outlaws that you already know what happens to most of them after the first game. There's no agency in it. So... and also there was a lot of tedium with the way the fast travel worked, with all those things. I would put in a fast travel system, not have you go back to base. I would have your character somehow be separate from that base, either from the beginning or for the majority of the game, or something where you're not always just going to the same home base. I did not like that all that much. And maybe one of the things you could do, which I dislike it when games retcon to this state, but maybe present it as you're playing as the bad guy from the first game, and the whole time you're expecting yourself to be safe, but then maybe have yourself die, and then have the person who killed you take your name, like Dutch. So you assume you're playing as Dutch the whole game, but Dutch is a nickname, and then the guy who kills you is also Dutch, and then that's the Dutch that we see in the first game. And so that way, instead of expecting Arthur, just be like, all right, what's going to happen to him? We know he's not around. And also they make John Marsden look like an idiot through the game, which I didn't enjoy that much either. Okay, moving on to some Switch offerings. Mario Rabbids and the Sparks of Hope. This is an easy one. Just make it like the first game. Don't change the damn combat. Remove the Final Fantasy-esque edge character from it. You can still have that plot line, but instead just make that be Rabbid Luna. You know, you kind of moved away from what made the first game so special, in my opinion. Just go back and do that. That's how you fix that one. Another quick hit. Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom is a phenomenal expansion on Breath of the Wild, but then it bogs it down with this stupid crafting system that I get a lot of people like, but as far as being fun gameplay, in my opinion, Either introduce the auto builder much sooner so that you don't find it 80 hours in like I did and make it so it's impossible to miss, or keep the same abilities from Breath of the Wild. I found it so much better to have the bomb and the ice and the stop time versus the ones they gave you. You know, going up through the floor was fun, but everything else, attaching and building, just it felt like the same. It felt like extensions of the same mechanics, and it also ruined weapon procural. So anytime you would get reagents, you could make better weapons than if you killed something hard that was really hard, like a Lionel or one of the hardest shrine bosses, and got their weapon. So as much, and it's funny. It's in every right's a better game than Breath of the Wild, but I prefer Breath of the Wild immensely more. If you could have the Breath of the Wild mechanics with the Tears of the Kingdom map, I think that would be an absolute perfection of a game. And then you could work around the ability to be in the sky with, you know, certain things that allow you to be in the sky. So that's what I think on that. Remove those. Just go back, and because you have no offensive weapon without the bomb, you have no offensive weapon on Link unless you have something on you. So I think that's a limitation in the game and something that they made a mistake doing. Last Switch game, Triangle Strategy, a game I wanted to love so much. My biggest gripes with it really is the pacing. So they have this weird thing where when you go between fights, it then shows you where you can go through the map and listen to these instead of just having autoplay. Just play the damn things. Don't make me go to the map, click it, go to the map. It slows it down, it bogs it down. So that'd really be the biggest thing I would do to fix that. I would have the ability to do more random battles on the map itself instead of having, and there's also the branching pathways aren't very branching. So you make it feel like you're going to go like branch off into here, but really it's one of those things where it goes like this, you go there, and then it goes back like this. Like, I hate it when branching pathways do that. That's what's nice about some of the older games like Vanguard Bandits is there's 3 distinct pathways. Now they might use identical maps, they might use identical fights. That's fine if you do that, but you're actually feeling like you went in a different way and that your decisions actually mattered. And looking at it with Triangle Strategy after I beat it, unless other than the final fight, the different branching pathways really don't matter all that much. So I would solve that. I would have the branching pathways truly go and branch, and then I would make it so that you could just autoplay the different story scenarios. But not much else. Combat in that game is phenomenal. All right, lastly, I guess we'll end with a weak one. So Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I haven't played the sequel, but really it's just, man, how much are we... I mean, this really feels like Disney Star Wars. There's another Jedi that survived Order 86 or 76, whatever it's called. Your whole mission is tracking down this list of the Force-using, Force-sensitive children, which then you get and you destroy or you don't use. There's all this lore, all this mythos, all this retconning. It uses things from the parts of Star Wars I'm not familiar with, like the sisters of some green flame, something or other, and it's just... My biggest problem with this game, honestly, is that the problem Star Wars games have is lightsabers. So lightsabers are both incredibly fun to use, but incredibly hard to implement into a game because, in theory, a lightsaber should make every interaction like Bushido Blade, where you instantly kill them. So how do you do that? How do you do that in a game? Or how do you make that fun? I don't know, but this wasn't it. The combat was not that enjoyable. You know, it's clear this was not made by From Software. That's someone trying to pretend to be From Software. And just hitting someone over and over and over again with a lightsaber, just it feels weak. Like, why am I not cutting this guy in half? I've seen Star Wars. Lightsabers are dangerous. I've hit this guy 30 times and they're not dead yet. So I would completely change that gameplay, make it a very high-risk, high-reward system like Bushido Blade or something of that nature, which I know doesn't make any damn sense. and also the storyline, like, I don't even know how I'd fix this. I think I just threw it in here. I don't know how I'd fix the damn thing. I'd probably fix it by not making it. Anyways. Alright, this was a meandering video. Probably not my best, but let me know what you guys think. That's what you get for this week. Special thank to all of our Patreons. As a reminder, I release a new video every Tuesday. Please let me know how would you fix some of these games, or if there's other games that you would try and fix too. It's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.